Like pixels on a screen, these are the games of our lives. All right, it's another episode of the Games of Our Lives. This is episode 6, so it's time for a format change, very clearly. Michael is out on assignment this week, so joining me is another good friend of mine, Ray. Say hello, Ray.
Hello, Ray.
Okay, good. Now we have a theme going.
I gotta be honest, I'm happy to be here, but I'm very disappointed.
Uh-oh.
I was under the impression I would be doing the podcast with Mike, and I have got one agent to fire.
Oh, well, sorry for the old switcheroo. I mean, he is the more charismatic one.
Why do I feel like this is probably how you get a lot of your dates?
Yes. Yeah, I set them up with Mike, and then I swoop in saying that Mike got in a car crash moments earlier.
The best wingman is the wingman that is unawares.
The angel wingman. So, Ray, you play video games this week?
I've been known to dabble just a bit, sir. My schedule has me fragmented on time, but I've been dipping into the Kombat's Le Mortoir.
Okay. Are you playing on the PC version or console?
No, I do err on the side of the console, even though I generally belong to the glorious PC gaming master race. I mean, any kind of a game that the main bait is social, I figure console is probably the safer bet. And so far, I have to say that it runs phenomenally well on the console. They make that engine do things it should not do.
Good. That's good. I don't really get that deep into fighting games because I'm not good at them. What is your take on them?
Well, I'll tell you right now, good. I'm so far from good that button mashers scoff at my capability. It's I'm one of those guys. I got to try everything else so that I can speak with authority on it.
Mm-hmm.
But this one's really good. I think Mortal Kombat 9 really redefined the genre and kind of brought back non-Capcom tournament fighters to the screen because it had this amazing involving story mode, good cinematics and a lot of real meaty stuff to get into there. If like me, you're an insomniac without a whole lot of like readily available comrades to take controller to, really gave you something to do. So that's returned, albeit in a more bite-sized form. And, unlockables, crypt, expansions, extra characters, the full gamut's in there. If you have even a passing interest in fighters, I'd strongly recommend it.
Are the post-release money hooks as bad as people say?
I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think if you look at the DLC offerings on the table for Mortal Kombat, although technically this is Mortal Kombat 10, they are saying it is officially titled Mortal Kombat X. If you look at the DLC offerings for it, there's a pretty clear delineation between what was NetherRealm Studios' idea for DLC and what was Warner Brothers' idea for DLC, because they do have extra characters, costumes, there is a season pass for that kind of content. And even some of that is actually charity. If you purchase a particular skin, it donates money to a pool for charity. And then on the darker side of that, you've got cop-out DLC where you can unlock easy fatalities. So instead of the complex, ego-boosting combinations you would have to do previously to, say, rip out a comrade's larynx and spit on it, now you just hold X. So that seems kind of against the spirit of the fighter to me.
Now, do those easy fatalities work in all the multiplayer modes?
As near as I can tell, yeah, it's universal. It's just a cop-out way for you to do it, which, I mean, I guess in the old days of Mortal Kombat, that might have made sense, if you got small kids trying to play with older players or less experienced players and you want them to get that thrill of victory. But, I mean, with Mortal Kombat X, we're on a level of detailed viscera that I think excludes a lot of the younger players. And, if you're just now deciding to dip your toes into a series on its, 10th edition, maybe it's not for you.
Yeah, that is definitely a weird choice. But, I mean, as a genre, fighting games seem to be dinosaurs with the way modern games are made and the way that they make money. I think Killer Instinct is doing great work in sort of practicing the way that it could be handled in the future in a non-predatory way. Whereas it seems like this new Mortal Kombat has taken pages from other modern games post-release content and sort of been the bad example of it.
Well, I don't know that I would necessarily say it's a bad example, as even, I mean, you can look at the totality of the DLC on offer for MKX, and none of it is really required. I mean, the extra characters are nice, but, you know, they're not drastically different from anything that exists. And in a game with a fairly plentiful roster, I mean, it's got to be like 20 characters, and then each character has 3 different variations on the fighting with different move sets and defensive posturing. There's a lot of content in there before you double dip into the wallet. But you know, I guess I can see the publisher wanting to eke out that little extra bit from what is already a pretty thin margin on a lot of game development these days. But once you start simplifying a core mechanic for cold hard cash, or there's even an option to enable all the unlocks at once without playing the game to earn the coins or playing the crypt metagame to do so, it starts to feel a little cheap. But the Killer Instinct format of sort of software as a service come to fighting games, I think is innovative and probably frustrating to some, but they've handled it really well.
Well, I mean, it's taking its cue, as it should, from maybe like what history will show as the most successful game of all time, League of Legends. So
true.
I think that's probably like a step forward in saving that genre if it is dying, which it seems to be, as the only games that come out are just iterations on past versions.
Right, you kind of have the same hassle that I know you and I both deal with on the corporate side of things, where at a certain point, an office suite can't really innovate that much more, but they still want that revenue stream every year, so the changes become less and less useful, but that cost doesn't ever seem to go down.
Yeah. So for my end, I played, pursuant to the podcast last week, I played a bunch of the first Metal Gear Solid game.
Woohoo!
And that is some crazy ass shit.
Now, see, that surprises me. So Metal Gear Solid, like the remaster of that first PlayStation 1 game. Am I right that's what we're talking about?
No, I'm playing a digital version of the PS1 version, not the GameCube version. So I got the Legacy Collection, which has all of the Solid games in 2 discs and a digital download for the first game. So it's PlayStation 1 graphics, which are blocky and it's on a PlayStation, so it's got all the original controls.
They don't need your bilinear filtering.
No, they don't. They just need to shake their heads in different directions to indicate that they're speaking.
So I want you to elaborate on what you mean by crazy, because I have some clear thoughts on Metal Gear, both as a franchise and that particular installment, and I want to hear if they contrast with yours.
Well, at its very core, the story that I've gotten so far, and I've gotten up to the nuke building, which is after the first 2 bosses. Right. So the story thus far is, at its very core, an anti-nuclear war allegory told through basically what I would call like a Steven Seagal filter, where it's basically playing out like an action movie from the late 80s starring either Kurt Russell or Steven Seagal, where just this crazy, over-the-top, impossible meta-science bullshit everywhere sort of informs the weirdness of the game. And like the dialogue is a little off too, in that Snake sort of repeats the last word of whoever's talking to him.
Which, as a callback, works real well on those first dates. I recommend that approach.
Jeez. And I can, from the benefit of years, I can see the influence that it has on video games. I mean, you can press up against a wall. There's these really innovative stealth mechanics that were not around. But the controls are wackadoodle and the perspective is really weird. And the story is like this. It's a movie. I mean, I've played 2 hours so far, and I think half of that has been cutscene.
It is very cinematic.
But I mean, I am enjoying it. I don't dislike it. I got the inkling to get into the series after playing the action game, the Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, which is the greatest game title ever.
So good.
And sort of all that takes place sort of after 4, when shit just goes really off the rails. And there are basically robot cops everywhere.
Highly in the future. PMCs have gone full cyber.
Yeah. It's CSI Cyber over there. Yeah, I'm so like seeing this the roots of that is pretty interesting. Basically everything is nanomachines.
Yeah. So aliens are nanomachines.
Magic is nanomachines, basically. I mean, what you perceive as magic is just highly advanced science.
Yeah, any sufficiently advanced magic is nanomachines.
And doors can smell the salts in your body. So yeah, I mean, I'll check in with that as I progress through the series. It's actually not as hard as I thought it was. The controls are a little weird, but once you get used to them, they actually kind of make sense. Believe it or not, the weird hold down the square button to take aim and then release to shoot actually kind of works. And this game scratches a lot of itches for me that normally I'd only be satisfied when I'm playing like a Souls game, like the really satisfying boss fights or the weird like exploration, and like you get to certain points of the game and you're like, wait a minute, how would I be able to do this if I didn't just randomly explore this room 2 screens ago? Right. Then they probably had you can see in the design that they had a way for you to approach the game in so many different like ways that they've basically got all their bases covered, and that's pretty interesting. So
yeah,
go ahead.
I don't think anyone can argue that the MGS series is a triumph of game design. My only concern about that series is that I feel like it started strong and is arguably still a good gaming experience, but theme and story-wise sort of crawled up its own ass years ago and continues to evolve into some weird incestuous cluster. Because the first game, as you say, I mean, it came out in a time when, the absolute prevalence and deluge of Japanese culture and anime and that sort of thing, it wasn't quite at the fever pitch it is now, where access is ever present. So when you play it, you're like, oh, okay, I got the themes. It's a good action story. The gameplay is fun, and it's just weirdly Japanese enough to be refreshing. And I loved the first game. I thought it was brilliant. And then the series continues, and they lost me super hard at 2.
But the game is so weird, man. Like, you call up your master who gives you like tips on how to survive in the frozen tundra, and I had an experience last night when I was playing it where I called everybody in the codec from inside a cardboard box, and they all make fun of you. How crazy is that? That's crazy that they would actually think about that.
It's that attention to detail and insightful design that makes Kojima a legend. Yeah. I guess we should all be proud that he's now unshackled from the MGS behemoth and can now apply that same degree of madness to other genres.
He's always said, like, well, I mean, I've not followed the Metal Gear games, just sort of like because Kojima's a big name in the industry. He's sort of talked about a lot. So it's been in the consciousness that he's been wanting to get out of Metal Gear for like the last 3 or 4 games. So I don't know what he's gonna do.
But I don't know what he's gonna
do now. And I'm kind of.
Well, it ain't Silent Hills.
The licensing is weird about that. So I'm sure he'll find success somewhere because he's crazy. But only if it's in games, because I don't think he's a capable film director. I mean, he definitely wants to do movies going by the length of some of these cutscenes. But I don't think that he is good at them because they are basically just two people talking at each other for the most part.
Yes, in cribbing from another podcast, I love the concept that he may go to Kickstarter and launch his steel cog intangible.
Yeah, that sort of plays into one of the other topics that I had on my slate for this, which is the Koji Igarashi Kickstarter for Bloodstained Castle of the Symphony, or whatever it's called.
Yes, and I have poured out, all of my human pocket secrets for that Kickstarter because I am so happy.
That's another. So my history with video games is weird because the first console that I ever owned was the Dreamcast, 1999. Prior to that, I wasn't really allowed to have video games in the house by my parents because they're old.
Devil.
No,
yeah.
It was more that they didn't want to distract me from like schooling. I mean, I don't know. It's a whole weird thing. They're a good 10 years older than most of my other generation's parents, so they have a weird connection to the modern world. They just got smartphones last year. So video games were not really allowed. I had a couple of computer games, but mostly nothing. So like there's a whole generation of the 8-bit, the 16-bit, the PlayStation era. All of those games were games that I never really played. So I have this massive backlog of classics that I eventually need to revisit, and Symphony of the Night is definitely got to be one of them. And it looks really good. Like I'm mad that I never got to play it when it was like coming out, because it looks like a game that I'd get really into. So
yes, Symphony is unreservedly my favorite game of all time. Around the time when it came out and sort of the rise of the PS1, I was just a diehard computer guy. Like I was very into the LucasArts Sierra style adventure games of the day, and then as that gave rise to like Doom and Quake and that kind of stuff, I was all about the PC, better graphics, better time, Papa John's. But when I went to a friend's house and he fired up Symphony of the Night, the next day I bought a PlayStation and that game, that is how compelling it was. It is everything I wanted in a game at that time.
And this Kickstarter is basically going to create that spiritual successor. But yeah, no, it looks cool. So Ray, is there anything that you're sort of looking forward to is on your horizon?
Oh, so many good things. There's not enough time to play all the goodness. I think we're only 3 days away from episode 3 of Life is Strange, which I have sort of gotten into despite myself. That's a really weird game that the first episode I did not like and thought was wasty hipster nonsense, and then the second one kind of brought me around a little bit. It's kind of silly. I'm excited to see what happens. How do those game works?
Are they like the Telltale adventure games where it's a bunch of talking and like decision and like text trees and stuff?
Yes and no. So it basically works much like a Telltale game. There's some exploration, there's a lot of flavor text on things, and then a great deal of interaction and location jumping. Where this separates from the Telltale experience is the game is not inherently broken. It actually works. It won't crash. Your save games don't disappear. So that's nice. And then it has a mechanic of rewinding time. So your main character can back time up a minute amount. Sort of, you can, I suppose, sort of any scene you're in or location you're in, you can rewind time up to the point you entered that location. So what it does is give you an excuse to fully explore the conversation trees without the whole save and reload to see what happens nonsense that a Telltale game would entail. And in addition, it kind of gives you this sort of weird thing where you can discover information that you can then rewind and supply in context to get even further branches. So it's interesting, and with the last episode, they finally started to paint a story. So I'm hoping that trend will
actually
continue.
Sounds pretty interesting. It's like a puzzle game, but the puzzle pieces are talking.
Mostly, yeah. I mean, there's some action-oriented bits, but there's no Twitch controlling. There's no QTEs. It is basically a high-level visual novel about hipster teens.
Well, I mean, you are definitely not one of those. I've never met you in person, but I can tell that you're probably not a hipster teen.
Oh, that's what you think. I look like the white guy Kojima. Like I'm just coming up with poetry about the military-industrial complex.
Glasses on a chain, that sort of thing. But are you able to connect to the characters at all? Is there anything there for you or me?
Yes and no. So again, I think this is one of those that's evolving as they release it. And again, as opposed to Telltale, they're on a tight 6 weeks release schedule. So every 6 weeks there's a new episode. The first one was very gradual setup to a bunch of characters that you either hate or don't care about. And the primary character that you control and see the world through is she's quirky and likable, but the writing felt way too hard, like it was trying. It didn't feel earnest. It was trying to be more weighty and pretentious than it actually was, and that turned me off a lot, especially since not a great deal happens in the first episode. Now with the second episode, they introduce choices that ultimately matter, and not even in if you pick A then B happens and B is good, but in you actually have to have been paying attention to non-obvious things in the game to affect the outcome you want. And honestly, I think episode 2 is metaphorically, what occurs in it is also sort of metaphorical for what the game development is like, and that it is finding value in what you have and focusing it. So if 3 continues on that, I think we're up for a really solid series.
I'll have to look into that. That sounds pretty cool.
Liquor helps. I'm not going to lie. I was very drunk during episode 2, but it helped a lot.
It helps you connect to the teens.
Yeah, I can connect to all kinds of teen girls when I'm drunk.
Jeez.
That sounded wrong. Oh, no.
All right. So the only real news I think that happened in the last week that I kind of want to talk about, because, and I know you have opinions on this, is that they revealed more about next year's or this year's, whatever the next Assassin's Creed game is. It's going to be like 6, but they don't number them anymore because that's a bottomless pit of sadness there. So Assassin's Creed Syndicate was detailed this week.
Yeah.
And I like the Assassin's Creed games. I really enjoyed the first game, which is weird to say because it wasn't that great. But I think Assassin's Creed 2 and its immediate follow-up, Brotherhood, were probably like my favorite games of that generation. I really enjoyed them. So it seems to me, I haven't played Unity yet, and I probably won't, just because of all the badness that's associated with it.
There's no need to play Unity. You just tune into my favorite TV show, which is the Unity bugs that happen today.
So it seems like now every other Assassin's Creed game could be good, because 1 was 2 was good. 2 had some follow-ups, which we can't really count in that series because the first 2 were okay and the last one was bad. 3 was awful, except for the 3 was disappointing personally in that it didn't fulfill the promise of the series, which was eventually catching up to real time.
Can I just say how impressed I am that Ubisoft has now managed to create their own Nintendo naming convention nonsense because of the frequency of Assassin's Creed releases? Because, I mean, Unity was only, a few months ago. It was like 2 weeks ago they released the Assassin's Creed China or whatever it was. And then now they've already announced Syndicate. So it's like, did you see the new Assassin's Creed? The new Assassin's Creed? No, the old new Assassin's Creed.
And then everybody forgets that Rogue was also a day-and-date release with Unity. And nobody played it because it wasn't on the new consoles. It's it's weird because Ubisoft is this. I think they have to be the largest like developer of games in the world now because they pump out these games with such ridiculous frequency, and they are, despite the bugs that plague individual releases, they are complete games. I mean, they're not like these weird episodic games like Telltale's pumping out. They are whole multiple 15, 30 hour experiences that they pump out with alarming frequency. It's weird.
But see, and there is the problem because they're absolutely deluging the market with this property, which has been falling out of favor for a while. Not that it's not popular, but people I knew that were diehard Assassin's Creed people, just they don't care because they can't keep up, and the quality has been continually dropping. And what you're gonna have is, there's 4 Assassin's Creed games come out this year, and then in 10 years from now, a Kickstarter for something called like Mercenaries Motto is going to do amazing because they killed the franchise. And we're like, oh, I guess people just don't like Assassin's Creed games. No, we just don't like 8 of them a year that don't work.
Well, we're closer to that than you think, because the developer of like the first couple departed with Ubisoft a number of years ago and has been trying to get a project off the ground, which is a historical action game. So that is coming. The competitor to Assassin's Creed is coming, but like I'm sort of disappointed in them now because they've abandoned the meta narrative, which I found really interesting. So I came into Assassin's Creed 1 pretty late in the game, like a year after it had come out. But I didn't know anything about it because at that point in 2008 or whatever, games were not as ubiquitous as they are now, or as they became during that generation. So I had never heard anything about it. So the moment that you boot that game up and then you get out of the weird Animus chair, you're like, wait, what is this game actually about? And that grabbed me and stuck with me up to 4. 4 was really good. It just, the meta narrative was gone by that point, and that sort of disappointed me. So I don't know if Syndicate looks really cool. It looks like they're going to try to fix a lot of the problems that, like, other than the mechanical problems, the sort of philosophical problems that people had with Unity, and sort of try to make a better game out of it. But I mean, I don't know. There's nothing pulling me back into that world. It's more like it's a lot like, I don't know. It seems that Ubisoft makes a lot of those kinds of games where it is a self-contained story in a new sort of environment, and the game is pretty much the same. Like, there are a lot of parallels there with the Far Cry series since they picked it up, where, you sort of do all the same stuff, but now you're in a different location.
Yeah. I don't know. I find the Far Cry gameplay to be far more satisfying. And let me clarify, if I'm speaking passionately, that I hate the Assassin's Creed series. I could not loathe it more. Never have I played a crappier, wastier, poorly controlled game like these. They're just the worst.
I mean, you're not wrong.
So,
I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I just enjoy them. Yeah, Ubisoft is weird. I mean, because, like, I really wanted to like Watch Dogs, and I still haven't. I still haven't finished it.
That was heartbreaking.
It had the problems wherein playing it, the little bit of it that I did play, I want to go back to it, but the little bit of that I did play was like, man, Watch Dogs 2 is going to be really good. And that was kind of like really a weird thought to have, that this massive game will, if it does get a sequel, will eventually just become like Assassin's Creed. Well, we've been talking a real long time. A lot of this you will never hear because I will probably cut a lot of it out. But I want to thank Ray for joining me this week while Mike is on sabbatical. Ray, do you have where can people find you on the Intertrons?
You can find me at Bad Servo on the Twitter, and frankly, under the name Bad Servo at most popular destinations. You'll also notice myself and Chris as well on the Worst Thing Ever podcast, which comes out sporadically at best, but is always a treat.
Yes, I'll put a link to that in the description. If you've made it this far, do me a favor, recommend the show to a friend, help me grow the audience. It's the least you can do, clearly. I mean, basically.
Come on, people, rate, thumb, and subscribe.
You know it. Or just watch it to the end, because that's how the YouTube algorithm works, is how many minutes you've spent watching it. Just put it.
That's also where he hides the porn.
Just put it on in the background, you know? All right. Thank you for watching. This has been the Games of Our Lives with Chris and Ray. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button to see more videos. If you like the videos, please share them with your friends. If you got feedback for me, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. You could follow me on Twitter at fracktruck_games for the latest updates and notifications when new videos go up. And thus, dear viewer, I bid you adieu. Good night. Oh man, it's 61 minutes after the hour.
The hour proper must be deposed at all costs. Every hour is the mind killer of the previous hour.
Each new hour erases the last.
Yeah, man. It's evolution, son. For somewhere right now, there's a 12 p.m. that's like, I didn't come from no stinking 1 p.m.